Well, it looks like time is of the essence here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Yesterday, day before yesterday, Lindsey Graham and Senator Blumenthal introduced a resolution to address threat of Russian tactical nukes. U.S. Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal today introduced a resolution to respond to the Russian Federation delivering tactical nuclear weapons to the Republic of Belarus. This is the first time Russia has deployed nuclear warheads beyond its borders, and of course the United States has deployed their nuclear weapons all over the place since the fall of the Soviet Union, and represents a serious threat to global security in the midst of the war in Ukraine. Graham and Blumenthal noted their resolutions holds that any use of a tactical nuclear weapon by Russia, Belarus, or their proxies, or the destruction of a nuclear facility, Zaporizhzhia, sorry, I can't speak Russian or Ukrainian, is what this is talking about. That disperses radioactive contaminants into NATO territory would be viewed as an attack on NATO itself, requiring an Article 5 response. All right, and you guys see the resolution right here. If you want to see the full text, there it is. I will put a link to it. Next thing that happens, the very next day, Putin ally Lukashenko flees Belarus as Wagner launches a coup threatening Moscow. Another hammer blow for Putin. His closest ally has been reported to have fled his country as Wagner troops threaten to take Moscow. Now, is it true or not? Who knows? But this is what is being posted on the Daily Express. They have his flight path going to Turkey. All right. Now, so what is this all about? Look at this. Wagner coup prepares to seize nuclear weapons depots, says the Tatar partisan movement. Okay? The Ukrainian Crimean Tatar partisan movement, Atesh, claims the Wagner PMC has set its eyes on the 375 Object C near Borisovlebsk, Voronezh Oblast, corroborating earlier reports by the Gulagu.net human rights group. Atesh, a partisan movement of Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars that claims to have ensnared many agents within the Russian army into its ranks, claims that the PMC Wagner, engaged in an armed rebellion against the Russian authorities, is preparing to seize nuclear weapons depots in this oblast. All right? Citing its agent from the Wagner PMC, Atesh writes that Wagner's advanced units have reached the outskirts of Borisovlebsk, Voronezh Oblast. The city hosts a warehouse with nuclear weapons, also known as 375 Object C, under the 12th Chief Directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense. It is unlikely that the Russian army will be able to defend the depot on their own. Remember what I told you. This coup leader, if he is successful, the danger to this world will be tenfold in comparison with Vladimir Putin. There are few forces and means there. A significant number of tanks, artillery, and motorized professional infantry are required. At least a whole brigade is needed, and since no troops are available right now, the only way to get reinforcements is to remove operational reserves from the front fighting for the Voronezh nuclear depot, will probably lead to an increased escalation of hostilities between the PMC and the Russian Ministry of Defense, Atesh writes. This message corroborates the report from Gulagu.net Human Rights Project, which stated, citing its sources, that Wagner mutiny was planned as an armed insurrection at least from the fall of 2022, that Wagner plans to seize 12 objects of Russia's nuclear arsenal. Gulagu.net claims that the enigmatic Wagner commander Dmitry Utkin is responsible for this part of the armed mutiny. All right. The night of June 23rd, Wagner financier Prigozhin accused the Russian Ministry of Defense of striking a Wagner camp and announcing a march for justice, vowing to stop Moscow's top military leadership. Russia's official bodies denied any accusations of a strike in Wagner's rear. The Russian FSB opened a criminal case against Prigozhin, and Russia's top brass called upon Wagner fighters to defy Prigozhin's orders. This goes on and on and on, but you get the gist. And of course, this particular War News 24/7 also has this information up. And quite frankly, folks, I don't know how long this information is going to stay up. You can see the headlines. Now, it was just last week. It was just last week. I did a video. And it was concerning Israel selling Merkava tanks to Ukraine. Do you think that, in this video I pointed out there are hundreds, probably thousands of different scenarios how this particular nuclear war in the world will take place. But there's one thing. Out of every scenario, there is one thing that is going to happen guaranteed. That is when the nations begin fighting against each other, as written in Zechariah 14. It is written that Jehovah himself is going to cause this world war to take place. And this shall be the plague, that Jehovah will strike all the people that have ever fought, so ever waged war against Jerusalem. You fired a shot at Jerusalem. Any nation, any people that has ever fired a shot at Jerusalem. And this is pointing specifically, but not exclusively, to Rome. Just like what happened to the first Rome, or the first, just like what happened to ancient Babylon. So, the first Rome is going to get it. The second Rome is going to get it. And the third Rome is going to get it. Now, if you want, you can go on Google and you look up the first Rome, the second Rome, and the third Rome, and you will find that the first Rome being in Rome, the original, the second one was Constantinople, and the third Rome is, guess what? Russia. This plague will consume away, the flesh will consume away while they stand upon their feet. Now, the problem is folks think of a plague as a disease. Well, if you look at the word Magepha, it's a blow, a strike. It can be a nuclear strike. It can be a conventional strike, like a slaughter, as you read right here. It can be the secondary, or I should say, the third and the fourth definition are a plague as we know it, or a pestilence. You see? So it's not like the English word plague. So it's going to be a strike. Probably the first definition, a blow or a strike. That Jehovah will smite the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Not it shall come to pass in that day. It just says on that day. A great disturbance, panic, turmoil, confusion, discomfiture due to war. So this plague will be a side effect, or this blow or strike will be a side effect of a war. You see? From Jehovah will strengthen, get stronger. And it will be every hand on the hand of his friend, companion, and fellow, or neighbor. And his hand will rise up against the hand of his friend, companion, fellow, etc. And Yehuda will also be fighting at Jerusalem. It will be a world war. It began with brother against brother. Big Russ versus Little Russ. And it will spread like wildfire around the world. And in the end, the wealth of all the Gentiles round about will be gathered together, gold, silver, and apparel in great abundance. And this blow, the plague of the horse, the mule, in other words, and the livestock, and all the beasts, the cattle, so all the livestock will be in these locations. So in all their lands where they have cattle, horses, everything is going to be struck. Nuclear weapons, folks. Because it will be as a result of a war, as we plainly see, every man a hand against the hand of his fellow or against his neighbor. Like civil war. And it begins, and it looks like it's beginning right now with what started with Russia versus Ukraine, and now you have a civil war inside of Russia. Could this, I don't know, I told you in the last video, this thing, there's thousands of different ways this thing could end up turning. But in the end, all Israel must be saved. But there was a war of brother against brother, and that's typically how world wars happen. Now you have a civil war inside of Russia. And the coming tribulation upon the Gentiles will be, as it's written in Isaiah, somewhere in Isaiah, that what can go wrong will go wrong. So, am I predicting that Prigozhin is going to defeat Putin and become the next president of Russia? I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I've told y'all many times I'm not a prophet. All I'm doing is looking at world events and comparing them with Scripture. That's all I'm doing. And one more thing that I'm doing. I'm telling you, no matter how this turns out, all Israel shall be saved. I'll go to one more scripture, and I will cut this short because a lot of things are happening very, very quickly. I would urge all of you to have your bags ready. I don't mean giant suitcases. I mean a change of clothes, your shoes, whatever. And if you are told to leave and you are not at your house, don't even bother to go to your house. But I'm just saying, if you are at your house, you would like to have the stuff by the door once the call to leave and go to Jerusalem occurs. And I know that some of you folks were dumbfounded by the statement I made over a year ago. To have a change of clothes and your toothbrush and your toothpaste and extra pair of shoes or whatever, and also your passport ready. I'm not saying you're going to need a passport. I'm just saying be ready. Do everything in your power to be ready. Don't be asleep. Because as I'm saying, I'm telling you right here and right now, all Israel shall be saved. And if you are grafted in among the branches, then you are a member of Israel, not a member of the church. We'll start in verse 11 of Romans 11. Have they stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid. But because of their false step, their trespass in the days before the destruction of Jerusalem, salvation is come to the Gentiles for what? To provoke Israel to jealousy. Now, if the false step, the trespass of Israel be the riches of this world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more shall be Israel's fullness? Because Israel's fullness is coming when the time of the Gentiles comes to the end. I'm speaking to you Gentiles, because I am the apostle to the Gentiles. Now I magnify my office, so that if by any means I may provoke to emulation or provoke to jealousy, you should read, them that are of my flesh of Israel, and might save some of them in those days. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, then what shall the receiving of Israel be but life from the dead? Yes, Israel is going to receive life from the dead. When? When the time of the Gentiles comes to the end. Why? Because if the first fruit, if Yehoshua is sacred, the lump, which is Israel, is also sacred. And if the root is sacred, then so are the branches, all 12 of them. And if some of the branches were broken off, and you being a wild olive, not a wild olive tree, but a wild olive, you were grafted in among Israel. See, you Christians, you tried to tell Israel that they had to join the church and believe in Jesus to be saved. That's a lie. But in order for you Gentiles to be saved, you have to be grafted in among the branches of Israel, partaking jointly of the root, which is Yehoshua, not Jesus, and the fatness of the domestic olive tree. Boast not against the branches, but you Christians, you did. You Gentiles, you did boast against the branches. You denounced them. You profaned the name of Jehovah. But if you boast, you bear not the root, but the root bears you. You will say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you now stand by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if Jehovah did not spare the natural branches back in 70 AD on the Roman calendar, be careful, take heed, because he will not spare you either. Look at the severity and the goodness of Jehovah. On them which fell severity, but toward you goodness, if you continue in this goodness, otherwise you also shall be cut off. And folks, we are about to witness the world being cut off any moment. But when the world is cut off, when the nukes start flying, all Israel shall be saved. And they will no longer abide in unbelief, but they will be grafted in, for Jehovah is able to graft them in again. Because if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles comes, or the time of the Gentiles comes to the end. And so all Israel shall be saved. All Israel to save. Because it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away unrighteousness from Jacob, because this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. I told you so. I warned you about this. I warned you that this day was coming. So I hope you have heeded that warning, and I hope you are ready. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but I know that in the end, this is the final outcome. Romans 11, verses 25 and 26.